let's talk about like improving. Improving is a very important thing, or learning how to paint is actually very important. And which brings the question: how do you learn? And there's like a lot of ways. Um, so I guess there's like really like two very distinct approach. One of them being you just in general getting better. So you look at like basic techniques like base coats, dry brushing, and what like all the basic techniques, and then you just paint. Right? That's kind of the dumb answer. It's like not fun. How do I get good at anything? Well, you have to do it. Yeah, and there's really no. That's kind of the basic of everything. If you just like stare at your paintbrushes long enough, you're never gonna get good. It's not how it works. And like you can buy like $40 brushes. If you don't use them, you don't use them, right? So there's really no way around. At some point, you have to actually paint. Now, just painting, as I've talked earlier in this stream, just painting gets you somewhere. If you do one Space Marine per day, and then you just do that 100 days in a row, the difference between your first Space Marine and your 100th Space Marine is going to be obvious. So you're just gonna get better by forcing it, right? And the other thing is like on the first day, it will probably take you 3 hours to paint that Space Marine, and then the same Marine painted to the same standard on the 100th day is gonna take you 35 minutes, just because you did it, you did it. One of our like regular like stream attendee, the Green Wombat, he does that. He started his first Marines. They're yellow, the Imperial Fist. He picked all the art stuff, and it took him forever to paint his first couple of minis. But now he's got like a big army, and he adds unit, and he goes pretty freaking fast to it because he's doing the same thing. And then the second approach is well, again, it also they all involve painting, right? You're never getting away from this. But the second approach is really you want to learn one thing. Well, just like focus on the one thing, right? So what's the example I gave earlier about the cloak? Well, I want to learn glazing, so we're gonna practice glazing. So you look at one effect and then you practice it, and I'll show you an example here with these little Marines here. They're not pretty, but I want to try something, and I'll put pictures on the video or whatever. But these Marines, this guy's not finished. He's never gonna be finished, folks. This is like Space Marine Steve over here, never getting fucking finished. Okay, but I want to learn something and try something. So Space Marine Steve gets it, and then I practice this thing. Pretty happy with the result, or even if I'm unhappy, I'm gonna chuck it back in the fucking thing. Um, but I practiced that one thing. Same thing we did. If you look it up, there's a video on non-metallic metals. That's exactly what we did. We picked a couple of Space Marines. We did shoulder plates in non-metallic metals, and then little leg plates in non-metallic metal. I watched a couple of tutorials. I go, okay, this is this, and that. And then I just work at it. And these minis are never getting finished. I just repainted on top of one of those because I don't care about finishing it. I wanted to learn this non-metallic metal thing. So I watched a couple of things. I found a way that made me happy to do it. Like, oh, I like this. I understand what he's like explaining. We'll do that. So, but really, it's painting. Now I'll give you a couple of like just quick little tips. If you're learning, focus on the basic. The basic gets you way further than you think. Than trying to like jump steps and whatnot, like finding shortcuts. Shortcuts are the devil, okay? Especially when you're learning things. I don't know. Everybody does that. I don't know the psychology behind it, but it happens all the time. I do it like constantly, and I piss myself off. It's like, oh, but if I don't do this and I skip this step, and like, dude, Max, you don't even know this technique. Why are you trying to skip? Like, you have no idea of like what you're doing. So don't skip step. Like, follow to the T until you get it, and once you get it, then start to play with it. But if you're like looking at like tutorials and whatnot, follow it to the T. Don't discredit. Second thing, if you're like learning a technique and you paint something using that technique, talk out loud. This is called a rubber duck technique. It's I think programming or computer science something technique. Explaining something out loud while you're doing it will show you exactly what you don't understand because you're not going to be able to say it out loud. I'm doing this because this. I'm doing this because this, and then at some point I'm going to do this, and then you're stuck because you can't explain it. And that's a programming thing, and people would talk to their little rubber duckies. Because a rubber duck is a very simple creature, so you have to explain it in layman's term. And I learned about this, and I realized I did this. I do it on the stream constantly, and I did this in painting classes before that. And because, just in general, I talk to myself like a fucking weirdo, but that's besides the point. So these are all kind of like little techniques. And then the last thing that I would probably advise you is find somebody to hold you like accountable, not like your mom or like your friends that will tell you, good job, buddy. They will always be like super positive. Find somebody that's kind of real, and then go, and then ask them, and just to be real, like, what can I improve on this, or what are my like weaknesses on like this very specific thing, and then go from there. Because like don't, and you have to be very careful who you pick. Some people will just be assholes about it, and some people will also just like tell you, "Oh, you're doing great, man. Yeah, I love this." Like, so you need to find like the in betweener, right? Oh yeah, and then that's kind of also the last thing which I talked about earlier. But we're very lucky with miniature painting in that very little effects or very little like techniques will actively damage and make your miniature like completely destroyed. You can always strip models, so even if you don't learn a painting thing, you're gonna learn to strip models at some point, and then that's fine. So like it takes a lot of like work to actively damage a miniature beyond like all repairs. So even if you don't have like your own little like Space Marine Steve guy, damaging your minis beyond the point of like I can strip and start again is like really, really like you have to use some weird fucking product way out of left field that if you're learning to paint, you probably should not be using this like super weird fucking thing. Right. Do you guys like this like screen? If I don't move my hands too much, it's pretty cool because the yeah, I like this. I think I like this.